You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing and summarizing a book called To Kill a Mockingbird. The reason I chose this one is actually a recommendation from my mum, which is super cool. But I grew up in the UK and we didn't get to read this one at school. And everyone in the US, which is where I've moved to and I've lived for the last 5 years, they have. So I didn't want to be left out anymore. I wanted to understand a bit more about this book, and that's the reason why today I've chosen To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay, so To Kill a Mockingbird. First thing I want to summarize is some of the characters, and that quote that I put at the start, that is by Atticus Finch, who is our main character, and I love Atticus Finch. He has 2 children who are quite young. So we have Jem, and then we also have Scout. Jem's a little older and it's a boy, and then we have Scout, who's a few years younger than Jem. So Atticus Finch is an attorney at law, and he is set in the fictional area of Macomb, which is in Alabama. We don't see the story through Atticus's eyes though. The story is seen through his youngest child, little Scout's point of view, which makes for extremely interesting reading. So one of the storylines that persists throughout this book is through Scout's eyes, and she's a very young girl during the perspective of this book, is the talking about one of their neighbors called Boo Radley, who nobody has ever seen. And they live pretty much next door to Boo Radley. And one of their big goals as a child is to see this person. So they do small mischievous things like heading up to the house when they shouldn't and trying to coax him out of the house, which is one of the main themes throughout the start of the book. The second overarching storyline is through Scout's eyes, which is again the perspective of a child, so it makes for really interesting reading. We see her father defend a black man in the local courts. Now this is a very contentious topic and obviously creates a ton of issue in their small town due to the timings. Now the book was published in 1960 by Harper, but the book is set from 1933 to 1935. So this is an area of the Great Depression in between World War I and World War II, which makes for an interesting read. Now again, I don't want to give any spoilers away, so that's all I'm really going to give you for the summary. But not only are those 2 storylines, it's all the small trivial storylines that a child would bring into this. The writing style is very clear, very concise, and one thing I loved is it gives you a great look at the language used during that period of time. So if you are somebody who likes history or modern history or American history, you get to see the authentic language used during that period of time, and it reads exactly how you would imagine it to in your head. So the way that Harper Lee has set up the wording gives you such an authentic feeling of that period of time, which is something I loved. One of the things I loved about To Kill a Mockingbird was the fact that the perspective was through a young child's eyes. The reason why is because it is so descriptive, and I couldn't help but go down memory lane myself. The first few chapters, especially when it's explaining Scout and Jem and the games they play in the garden, and it really captures how you think as a child. And it took me all the way back to me and my brother and then my sister growing up and spending a lot of time in the garden, the kinds of games we used to play, and the way we just used to think and talk to each other. And honestly, I would read the book just for that trip down memory lane. Another big positive of having the book through Scout's eyes is not always knowing where the book's going to go, due to the fact that she doesn't understand everything that the grown-ups are doing. There's a lot of things that happen when you're a kid that you take at face value, but you're not 100% certain what that person's doing or why they're doing it. And she only explains it from her point of view because it's from her point of view. So although a lot is happening in the book, sometimes it leaves you guessing as to what happened the scene before or what is really happening, and you have to wait for later clarification, which is fantastic because you feel like a child in the book. And I love that about this book as well. The thing I would say that I appreciated the most from this novel was just our main character, Atticus. I loved him so much, and I think if you read this book, you will love him as well. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but he is such a humble, caring, do-good individual, and he just makes me want to be a better human from having interacted with him through his daughter's eyes. Now, is he maybe blown out of proportion because it's through his daughter's eyes. I don't know. We'll never know. But he's an amazing human, and I'm so glad I got to meet him in this book. Something that I thought was an amazing theme through the book was how they used Boo Radley as a metaphor for the racism during that period of time, and how ignorance is so important, and hearsay is so important for creating ignorant beliefs. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail of it because I don't want to ruin any of the storyline, but they have a real clear vision of who Boo Radley's going to be due to what they've heard from everybody else and the stories, and really ignorance because they've never met him. And then it turns out, maybe he isn't exactly like that, which I think showed the town's, it really gave a great parallel between racism as a whole, but also specifically in that story, that town's racism, which was awesome. I could see those themes, and I liked how they knitted together. So as always, I do want to give a couple of dislikes from the book, and classics are classics for a reason, so it's always really, really hard to give dislikes. There's a reason they stood the test of time. I think the first dislike I have for this is kind of a juxtaposition, because I love the perspective through Scout's eyes, and I wouldn't change it, but something that is a downside from that is the fact that as a child, you sometimes focus on the wrong things. You're very overly descriptive on some things that don't matter, and you skate over small things that really are big. So there's a lot of things that I would like to have known a bit more about during the story, but due to the nature of Scout's description and what she chose to focus on, I'll never know, but I suppose that's the price you pay, and I did love her perspective as well. So it's a bittersweet dislike right there. And my second dislike is just how it made me feel. There's a lot of moments where it made me feel great inside and amazing, but there's a lot of moments where I was mad. I hated some of the characters, I hated some of the attitudes in the book, and I think that's a testament to the author again. Also, a bit of a cop-out and turning a dislike into a positive again, but, like I say, classics are classic for a reason, and Harper Lee is definitely a magician. So, moving on to my recommendation, I'm going to give it a 7 to a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed the book, and the main thing was how much it made me feel. It made me feel great, it made me feel sad, it really transported me, which is what a great book does. I read this book in only 2 days in 2 sittings because of how much the story gripped me and dragged me along, so I can't recommend it enough. Alongside that, it's really going to bring you back to your childhood, regardless of when you grew up. So I would say, for me, a lot of my growing up was done in the 90s and early 2000s. I would say, I was actually a child in the 90s, and it just dragged me back straight to that. And it's weird because although they're very descriptive of the areas and locations, you can't help but put in where you grew up into the story in your head as well. So that was an awesome experience. I really enjoyed that. Another thing I would recommend as well is, regardless of whether you've already read this at school, and regardless of whether, I don't know, it was like 6 months ago or a year ago, or maybe you read it 30 years ago at school, I would read it again. I think the perspective you get as you get a bit of an older head on your shoulders, and maybe you've experienced more as a person, I think the book will probably give double and triple meanings, and I can't wait to wait a couple of years and to read it again when I'm at a different stage in my life. Maybe when I have some young kids, I think that would be awesome. And my last takeaway from this, again, no spoilers, so you can't give huge and in-depth reviews on everything, is I'm 100% certain that this book inspired a generation of lawyers. It almost made me want to go and study law so that I can defend and I can fight for justice. And I'm not sure if there's any statistics on it. Maybe I should have looked it up before I started making the video, but I just believe so many people were probably inspired by Mr. Finch and the way he deals with life and also his profession. So I don't know if any of you know of anybody who's inspired by law, please comment below. Inspired by this book, please comment below. So I want to leave you guys with a quote, and this quote was really, really cool. I absolutely loved it. It's at a point in the book where Scout, who again is Atticus's daughter, is asking him why he doesn't think he's wrong, or why he's going to do what he's going to do when everybody else thinks he's wrong. And what he actually replies to her is, he says, the one thing that doesn't abide by a majority rule is a person's conscience. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate it. If you would like to, then subscribe and like, and I'll be posting more videos like this. My next books that I have lined up, actually went to the bookstore and I bought like 6. I get so excited when I go there. I love a bookstore, mate. I'm sure you guys do if you're also watching this. So I bought 6, and they're of a big variety of books. I bought one self-help book, one that was about politics directly. I bought 2 fantasy books that are part of a series, and then I also bought another classic as well. So I haven't quite figured out which one I'm going to read next, but I'll figure it out today, and you'll see from the next video. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.